There's never been a more exciting time to be a podcaster or even a content marketer than right now. The things you can do with AI just blow my mind. I used to be part of a podcast agency, and it would take a team of like 5 people 2 weeks to do what I'm going to show you I do in a matter of like 90 minutes. And the post-production is just like almost fully automated now. So I can't wait to show you. I'm going to walk you through my pre-production, production, and post-production process to turn a single episode into a content waterfall. Welcome back to the AI-Driven Marketer. I'm Dan Sanchez. My friends call me Danchez. And so let's go through step by step how I'm using AI to speed up the whole process of my podcast and do all the things that I could just never take the time to do. Because if you're a podcaster, then you already know like the amount of work it just takes to get to the end of the line, just to get the show notes and the cover art and all that stuff loaded and scheduled, and you're done, right? It takes so much work just to get it to scheduled and published that we oftentimes don't actually take advantage of the massive piece of content that we just created in order to fuel the rest of our content pipeline, right? Because honestly, video podcasts specifically are, in my opinion, the top of the pyramid. It can be turned into, of course, video, but then audio, then a full blog post, then all the kinds of social content we could ever want. And if we make a custom image for it, we have image that we can use on social too. So it is a whole package of content marketing that we often never fully utilize, but no more. And I mean, as good as I was at AI before, now that it's fully automated, I'm actually doing this stuff and taking advantage of every single episode. It just works like clockwork now. So let me walk you through step by step, starting with pre-production, right? We can't ignore that. While I'm very excited to show you what's on post-production, pre-production, I have some new goods for you today. For starters, I am going to open up my screen here. If you're following along on audio, I'm going to be spelling out what I do. But if you want to open it up and play it on Apple Podcasts, you can actually watch the video or go over to YouTube. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. Come watch it over there. Or you can go to danchez.com where all these episodes are now full YouTube videos and blog posts for you to skim through and look at yourself. So I'm on myshowrunner.com where I have built and partnered with building this free custom GPT. I even give you the instructions so you can repurpose it, call it your own, do whatever you want with it. Our copyright on this thing is your ability to copy and do whatever you want with it. All we ask is that you put in your email address and subscribe to our newsletters for access to this thing. But I'm just going to show you what it does. I'm going to open up this custom GPT. Again, you can get the instructions for free and build your own at myshowrunner.com and get all the videos and tutorials on how to build it. It's actually 2 custom GPTs. I'll get into the second one later. But the first one is the pre-production. It is remastered, okay? I actually went through, because I built this thing a year ago, and I've learned a lot about custom GPT since. So this thing runs smoother, works faster, and now all you need to do the pre-production for guest-based interviews, particularly for my solo episodes, I actually bullet point them out on just a notes pad somewhere. So I don't use this for my solo episodes. I only use this for my guest-based ones. I actually go and paste the URL here of someone like Carl Ye, which Carl, we need to do another episode. You were one of my early ones. We need to get this back. But I'm going to use you as an example. You put in their URL, and this custom GPT goes to work, speeding up what usually takes 30, 45 minutes to do an episode and gets it done. Here, it's putting in the LinkedIn URL and it's doing a full, it's trying to figure out which Carl Ye are you talking about, right? I'm going to go with it. It's number 1, right? So now it's going to go do a deep dive on Carl Ye in order to get ready to do the rest of the pre-production process. And it's going to search the web for him. It's going to pull his LinkedIn profile. It's going to go search his websites, his business, and get to know him a little bit better. For him, I'm going to talk about AI agents would be fun to catch up on. And so now my showrunner is going to take Carl's expertise in the premise of my show, which it already knows, and actually turn it into a number of different angles that we can take on for this episode. If I were to do another interview with Carl Ye, you can see here that it's actually provided me with 5 possible angles for this episode. Not the title, but just the angle, the main direction that we want to steer it in, because the more specific we can be, the tighter everything gets. I actually really like this practical AI agent playbook, since most agents are actually garbage. So I'm just going to say 4. You can see how this GPT is actually guiding me through the pre-production process and making it super easy to make a really high caliber outline for a show based on my show premise, based on Carl's expertise, based on the angle that I'm now chosen. It's now giving me 10 episode titles. It's been trained on how to write good episode titles. It's one of the parts that Susan Diaz actually added to this, was give it a bunch of examples to go off of, and it's writing some awesome titles. There we go. And I like Title 9, the no-nonsense guide to AI agents, what works and what doesn't. So I'm just going to give it 9 and have it move forward. And just like that, it's generated a whole show outline for me in just a matter of minutes. I can go ahead and pick through some of these, tweak the questions, eliminate some, maybe add another. But it's given me plenty to go for. It's even broken it up for me into segments, which is really helpful, giving me an outro and, of course, the intro to the show. So this is incredibly helpful for me as a podcast producer, because now I can copy and paste this, put it in a Google Doc. I can send it to Carl for him to take a look at ahead of the social. He can be more well prepared. But if you're running a podcast, you're interviewing guests, please grab My Showrunner at myshowrunner.com, because it will save you a ton of time. And again, if you want to unsubscribe to both our newsletters, that's fine. Just grab the instructions, make it yours, save some time, learn how to build custom GPTs like this one, because it freaking works. So that's the pre-production side, and it saves a ton of time for me to just walk through that process. It takes all the work out of it for me. Now, on the production side, we have my favorite podcast tool, which is Zencastr. Yes, Zencastr is my favorite because it does everything all in one. More and more, I'm trying to consolidate my tools. I don't know about you, but I find that I have like this SaaS explosion. I'm just like, oh my gosh, even personally, how many SaaS tools am I paying for? My gosh, I feel bad for companies. You're probably paying for thousands of these things. But I love Zencastr because it does everything. It does what Riverside does with the recording. It does what Descript does with the editing. And most importantly, it does the final mile of publishing, like you would get from something like Buzzsprout or Libsyn or Podbean or any number one of those podcast hosts that you usually have to pay for. Now you get all three of those in just one tool. Let me show you how it works. So generally, when I queue up a new session, I just go to join session. I have this new recording already loaded. The guest jumps in, and it works a lot like Riverside. If you've used Riverside or Squadcast or any of the other recording tools, it's kind of that same thing where you get to see what's actually being recorded as a stream right here, but it's also recording the high resolution on your personal computer and your guest computer, and then uploading that in the backdrops, so you can actually use a high-res version of it afterwards. So that's just really nice, and that just comes standard at Zencastr. Let me go ahead and jump to a past episode recording that I just did with my brother for the most recent Bot Bros episode. You can see after it's done, one of the first things I do is you can see it generates a transcript right here. I don't have to use a separate transcribing service or transcription service, and it just puts it here. I actually copy it and then put it right into, again, My Showrunner now has a post-production version also behind myshowrunner.com, so you can grab that there. And as soon as it renders this transcript, I jump over to my post-production GPT, paste in the transcript, and then click play. While that's loading, I'm going to come back here and then go straight into preview, click edit, and then bam, I have a full edit area where I can go ahead and choose to add captions or not. Generally, I keep mine pretty simple, just do a split screen, but then it can even come here and make clips with it. So actually with some episodes, I even use Zencastr to create the clips. It's not quite as good as dedicated clipping tools, but I find that it gets the job done and gets my clips done fairly quickly. So it does do that. I then come over here and I have a full transcript editing section where I can come in and edit out mistakes, cut the beginning, cut the end. It'll remove filler words, and I find it does a fantastic job of chopping ums and ahs. I can hardly even hear it or notice it when I'm watching the video playback myself. You can remove the long silences, so I always do that. You can come here and make different edits to your clips versus the landscape full episode. And another thing that I missed over on this edit side is you can add bumpers. You can add an intro and outro pre-recorded video. I'm actually going to start doing it soon for my own show. I haven't been doing it. Sometimes I sneak it in just after the intro. Sometimes I don't add it at all. But I'm probably going to pre-record a little bumper of some kind with a little sound and a little animation of some kind, probably with the 404 bot. So stay tuned for that because that's going to be coming as every future episode. So that's cool. You click apply. You clicked next, and it actually renders out the whole thing. Now, I'm not going to render this because I've already published this whole episode, but you have this section here where you can schedule it, you can run ads in it, and of course you can put in your show notes, title, and your cover art for your episode. So let me go back to that custom GPT, because like I said, this is one of the things that I'm so excited about now, because it renders out, this custom GPT gives me everything I need for my show notes. And you can go and customize the one that I give you in my showrunner. Mine gives me an episode description, my favorite AI tools that are kind of like, I always promote these ones. I mean, they're affiliate links, so I'm trying to, this is how I promote and earn revenue for the show. Resources, I mentioned the show, it goes and pulls those. Sometimes there's not always a link, so it gives me like, hey, it's referenced in discussion. Do you want to add a link? I'll just edit that later. And then timestamps. So I usually go and just grab the whole thing, paste it in here, and then when I'm done with that, it actually asks if it wants to write titles. Because again, while it generated titles for me on these guest episodes for shows like the one I'm doing right now where it's solo, I haven't even generated a title yet. So I'll come and take the transcript from the video and plug that into ChatGPT. It will do the show notes for me, but I'm missing a title. So I'll just say yes, and it'll start generating titles based on the transcription. And you can see it's added in a canvas, creating all kinds of different titles for me to riff on and ultimately plug into Zencastr to then schedule, right? And now we've moved on and we are done with this episode. I try to do all the editing straight in Zencastr and keep it pretty minimal, because I find the quality of a podcast is not in the fancy edits and the sound and the music. It's in the ideas and the ability for the host like myself in order to guide the guest or to actually communicate the value directly to the listener. That's why you're listening to it now. You're here to learn something, and that's not done through fancy editing. Sure, I could probably save a few minutes by clipping some redundant parts, but I find a good show is literally just trying to speed up the ability to communicate great content that you have. I think we all have a lot of content that we sit on, but because it takes so long to produce these things, we end up never really giving it the proper light, getting it out into the world like it deserves. So this speeds up the whole process, and Zencastr is by far the best tool on the market in order to speed up your whole podcast workflow for production and a little bit for pre-production here. So once it's published, let me just back out of here. It actually renders the whole episode. You can see I have the whole thing. And the cool thing about Zencastr is it publishes a video RSS feed. It's one of the very few podcast hosts where you can publish whole videos for your podcast, not just audio, because everywhere that takes audio will just convert the video into audio. But there's a couple players that can turn it into video, including Apple Podcasts. The other reason why this is really important is because now I don't have to upload to YouTube. Yes, this happens automatically. You can actually automate the uploading to YouTube straight through Zencastr, but there's a big missing piece. So let me show you my last step in my post-production process of how this RSS feed actually goes out and sends out all the content into the world. And that's where I'm going to go over to my latest tool to my AI tool collection called N8N. It is a competitor to Make.com, and I find it is a much better tool for a couple of different reasons. The only advantage Make has is that it's a freemium tool, so you can actually do a little bit with it without paying for anything. Versus N8N, you do have to do a 30-day trial, and then you have to upgrade, right? And it's about $25 a month or something close to that. The one major advantage to N8N, there's many advantages, but the one major one that sealed it for me is that it can deal with video-sized files. Make, not even close. Like a video podcast, we're talking about a 45-minute interview. It's a big file. It's like 5 megabytes or something. Sorry, 5 gigabytes, not megabytes. It's huge. But you could see in this automation process, it's triggered by the RSS feed that Zencastr produced. And I can either publish it now on Zencastr, right? Publish it right as soon as I'm done with it, or schedule it for later. Either way, the feed is going to be triggered by N8N. It's going to walk through this workflow automation. Again, this is going to be very visually intense, and I'm going to do a whole deep dive episode on this particular workflow so that those who want to duplicate what I've done here can see the exact settings that I've picked. So stay tuned for an encore to this one where I dive deep and into this N8N workflow. But for now, I'm just going to describe what it does so that you can get a picture of how powerful this is. So in this feed, or when the feed is triggered, it does a bunch of different things in here, and it looks complicated. And honestly, I will say that all these automation tools are a freaking pain to set up. Like every single little square node you see here, and they're all connected by a line to kind of show the automation, took me about an hour. Maybe 2. That's how long it takes to set up every single one of these. They're that big of a pain. And I'm pretty technically savvy, so it's more of your technical people are going to be interested in this, but I just want to show this will get easier and easier with time. So the first thing it does is it loads the video. This is this HTTP get video. It's just an HTTP request where it actually pulls the video file from the RSS feed. Again, it's a big file, so this takes a while. It then has to download it to NAN servers. From there, is actually uploading it to YouTube, sets the playlist. You have to do this as separate actions. You have to set the playlist for this particular video as a separate action, because while you can upload it, you can't upload it and set the playlist for it to go into a podcast, YouTube video podcast playlist, all in the same action. You then have to get the cover art. And this is the reason why I don't just push it from Zencastr specifically, is because I take a lot of time to come up with these little cover art pieces, right? Let me go back to Zencastr, and you can see these little square pieces of cover art. And I designed it in such a way so that I could just crop in from the top and the bottom to also use it as a thumbnail for YouTube, right? Highly recommend doing this, because this is time well spent, because you can use this episode thumbnail in multiple ways as a podcast for the promotion of the episode. It makes it much more valuable to have a highly produced episode cover art. And the one way I do that is by making the most of it by then taking it, and you can see this NAN sequence grabs the cover art, resizes it, because again, the cover art's 3,000 pixels. That's what podcasts want, is this 3,000 by 3,000 pixel square. It resizes it to about 1280, which is about the width of the YouTube thumbnail, crops it so that it's a rectangle, again, from the top and the bottom, and then sets that as the YouTube video for the video I just uploaded. That way, I never have to even go into YouTube. It's already set and done. And you can see as I go over here to YouTube, here's the video right here of the one we were just looking at. This particular thumbnail was already resized, cropped, and then set for that thumbnail for this YouTube video as it was being uploaded to YouTube. So coming back, that is not the end, right? I want to get it on YouTube with the right cover art, but that's not the end. I want to make more of it. So I actually come through and I scrape the Zencastr page. Let me come back to it. Unfortunately, Zencastr does not pass the transcript through the feed. So but it does publish it on the page, and it provides the URL of this page in the RSS feed. So in NAN, you can actually pull this URL from the feed and scrape it to find and just pretty much pull all the HTML from the feed. I then pass it through Google's Gemini AI model and say, hey, here's a page of HTML. I want you to there's a transcript in there somewhere. Go and pull out just the transcript. Google reads it. It's actually really good. Amazingly, Gemini is free. Like, you don't have to pay a little bit every time you use Gemini's model, so I use it for that. I then pass that cleaned up transcript from all the HTML, and I pass it into ChatGPT, where I have a prompt already pre-built with understanding of my show and what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to write, and says, take this transcript, turn it into a blog post. It then uploads that blog post to WordPress on my WordPress site as a blog, sets that cover art. Again, we already had the cover art created for YouTube. I'm going to set that same cover art for the podcast. I'm also going to upload it as a featured image and then set it as the featured image. It takes multiple steps to do that for WordPress. You have to upload the cover art, set it as the featured image. It's a mess. It takes a lot of steps. Now you can see I'm not done with this yet. I'm still actually working on the sequence, and this part isn't fully built yet. But eventually I wanted to also write a newsletter and then send it through my Beehive account where I can automate, or at least set it as a draft so I can come back in and add images to my Beehive newsletter. But I haven't even finished this part yet. So this is still a work in progress, and I'll probably do future videos on the details of this as it develops. But of course, we don't want to stop with a blog post. Oh, and note on that blog post. One cool thing about that blog post, you can see here's that video again. Here's the thumbnail set for it, but I don't put the thumbnail on top. The cool thing about this is because I've already done the YouTube video here, it has the URL of the YouTube video. I can come and pull that in a future part of the sequence, of this NAN sequence, and pull that directly into the WordPress post itself. So no longer do I have to embed it separately. I can now have that all done without me having to even check on it. I've even embedded a little bit of HTML around it so that it has a consistent style. It has the subscribe links that I want next to it. And of course, the blog post, now that I've refined the prompt, because I had to go through multiple iterations of this, looks pretty dang good. Now, every once in a while, I'll log into here and see some goofiness happening where, like right here, it's using some stars to bold it. It got its HTML and its markup mixed up, so I'll have to go back in and fix that. But I generally just set it to auto-publish now. I don't even get it to the point where it needs to be approved or moved from draft to publish for me to even publish it automatically now. It is reliably consistent. And that's what I want. You can see there's a little places here where it misses some bold, but that's fine. And honestly, this is still not a huge mistake. I can go back and I can live with that. I also read over it and make sure it's all good. And every once in a while, I might have said something in the podcast that's confusing for AI, but generally it's hitting it like 9 out of 10 times with slight edits to be done. So I'm just letting it auto-publish now. That, and I don't have like a huge amount of people coming to this website, or at least not these new episodes right away. That's just the long form pieces. We got the YouTube video, we got the blog post, we got the cover photo set in the YouTube video embedded in the blog post, but that's not it. Like I said, I got some more stuff coming with the newsletter. I'm even working it into my high-level CRM so that the guest can get notified if there's a guest. That's a future iteration of this one massive automation. But what I do have running now is using Airtable to store social posts. What I do is I scan the whole transcript again with ChatGPT and say, hey, find 3 unique ideas within the episode itself, 3 unique ones, and it outputs those 3 unique ideas. That output is then sent to ChatGPT again. It says, hey, you're supposed to take output 1, turn it into a LinkedIn post that looks like this. This one takes out the unique idea 2, this one takes unique idea 3, and each of them write their particular LinkedIn post. And I say LinkedIn post, it's really a social post, but I kind of format most of my social posts like LinkedIn because LinkedIn's the main place where I play and syndicate those across social media. I don't spend a lot of other time on social media, but if my writing's being done automatically here, then you might as well syndicate it everywhere. It actually goes all the way over to Airtable, and I would have it post for me, but I'm more particular about LinkedIn posts before it goes to LinkedIn, so I like to look at them, tweak them, make sure they're good before doing it. You can see I even have a mechanism here where it actually breaks or stops. It doesn't automatically post to it. It has a little check. It loads them into Airtable and then waits to see if they're approved before posting them out. So if I go to Airtable, you can see this one I marked as approved, therefore it posted the next 3. And in Airtable, you can actually come and open it up and take a look at the full thing. I've already posted this one here. Each one also is loaded with the image, just in case I forgot what it looks like if I've scheduled it out. Of course, I usually know. But it will also take the image and post the image that went with the episode itself in order to create a social graphic with the first one. Another cool little thing is because this is all in one, instead of pulling the episode URL, instead of pulling the YouTube URL, it actually pulls the URL for people who want to listen to the full episode based on the LinkedIn post itself and puts that URL of my website in there. That way they're coming back to this post where they have the links to wherever they want to subscribe and can watch the video right there. So it racks up my YouTube views, gets people to my website where they can bounce around and explore more things, and they can decide what they want. This has always been the best practice for me for podcasts. Like send them to a website you control that has the episode title, a place where they can watch it or at least listen to the full thing, where they find their link to subscribe, because you don't know if they listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. It could also be another one, but for most part, most of my audience is across these 3. Or if they want to read it, right? Because let's be honest, not everybody has hearing. Some people are deaf and need a different approach to being able to absorb the content. So that's why it's good to have a full blog post written for each one, for accessibility reasons, and AI makes that much more accessible for everybody. But of course, some people would rather skim the whole thing and just kind of give it a one-over rather than actually watch or listen to the episode, which takes more time. Now, a little bonus that I'm doing that I've not quite figured out how to automate yet, so I come and do this manual part afterwards, is Cast Magic, which is another tool that creates transcripts and content from your episodes, has this ability to embed a player in here where you can have magic chat. So people can actually come here and interact and ask questions about the transcript of the episode, which is kind of cool. Cool enough that I take the time to embed these into my blog posts. I mean, it comes with the video. I wish I could turn off these little video previews because the video is already on the top of the blog post. But just for the magic chat alone, people being able to come here and interact with the content in a different way is just kind of interesting. So Cast Magic makes that possible. And back here, again, I have it write 3 LinkedIn posts on, again, 3 unique ideas within an episode. And it puts all 3 here. And then when I set it to approve, it automatically moves it into the next phase where it posts the first one across all the different social channels. And I'm still building out the sequence to post 2 and post 3 specifically to LinkedIn. So that'll come. You can see it's going to wait 3 days and probably wait 2 weeks so that it kind of trickles out the blog post over time. Once right away, once another few days later, and then again out in the future so that episode's getting a little bit more traction. So that is my new AI-driven podcast production system, from pre-production with my showrunner, production with Zencastr, and the post-production distribution system with N8N. I hope this has been interesting to you. I will do a follow-up episode diving into all the unique details of how I set up N8N and how you can follow through in order to do the same thing. So that's to come. But hopefully this is giving you some inspiration, some new tools, and is giving you a peek into how I'm creating so much content just on my own without a whole podcast production team like it used to take at my previous agency. If you've enjoyed this video, please, it would bless me immensely. It would really help the show to give me a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or if it's on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up and a comment in order to get this show in front of more people. Those ratings make a huge difference. So please go give it a 5-star. And if you're feeling really generous, a comment of what you thought about this episode.